Hey, folks, it's Bruce Parkman today, hosting another segment of our amazing podcast, Broken Brains. I want to apologize initially for the delay in the release of additional segments. We went through two hurricanes here. Been a lot of picking up, a lot of packing up, but we got through it. This podcast, you might know, is focused on the issue of mental illness and repetitive brain trauma from two aspects: repetitive head injuries or repetitive head impacts like contact sports and hitting your head in the military, and repetitive blast exposure, which is a significant cause of brain degradation and mental health in our military communities. And throughout these segments, we actually do bring on the industries, just some of the most amazing people to come on this podcast and talk about their experiences with these two issues and what we need to resolve them, as they represent the largest form of preventable mental illness in this country. And we need to fix this. And this is what caused so much pain throughout our athletic and military communities. And that's what we try to address. But before we get started with the show, got some amazing news. We have now been the beneficiary of a donation from the Washington Commanders to host an amazing special operations tailgate at the Army-Navy game, December 14th of this year. We will be sponsored by a company called Blue Fusion, amazing software. Please check them out. And Horse Soldier Bourbon, who has won a massive amounts of awards. And that company is actually founded by Green Berets who participated in the invasion of Afghanistan. And they have an amazing story behind their whiskey. There will be all you can drink, all you can eat. And we have the top-ranked AC/DC band, Razor's Edge, out of Melbourne, Florida. That'll be hosting an amazing AC/DC concert. We'll provide testimonies. We're going to have veteran service organizations that support veterans in mental health. And this will be focused on raising money to support alternative treatments that are not available through TRICARE or the Veterans Administration. So I just wanted to put that out there. Today, I want to introduce our guest, Brandt McCartney from the 38 Challenge. I've known Brandt for quite a while. Unfortunately, both of us have shared similar circumstances with the loss of a close loved one from both RHI and RBE in his case. He's one of those rare combinations of both those issues coming to the forefront. Brandt is an athlete himself, played football at the high school and college levels. He has started the 38 Challenge in the name of his brother and has been a dynamic force in raising awareness about the issue of repetitive head impacts and repetitive blast exposure in the athletic communities, in our military communities. And he is the co-founder of an amazing organization called the Brain Optimization Lab that offers unique therapeutic approaches to athletes and military personnel who have suffered the impacts of brain degradation from their military service and athletic careers. And he focuses on improving their brain health and getting them back and resolving some of those issues and helping them live a much fuller life. Brandt, can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Yeah, man. Stoked to be here. Love you like a brother and a mentor and a father figure, Bruce. So I've been excited for this one for a while.
No, thank you, man. Hey, I understand that you just recently relocated to Tampa, Florida, just in time to experience some of our unfriendly weather here, huh?
It's an awesome welcoming party, man. Just right into Hurricane Helene and then Milton. So it was, I didn't even think about it when I was moving down here, and then sure as shit when we get down here, they're like, "Hey, we're having two massive hurricanes, the worst in 100 years. So welcome." I was excited, man. I bought into it. Was able to get out to Anna Maria. But I mean, just the destruction, man, and it's gotta fear the Lord, brother. Gotta fear the Lord.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the destruction was pretty severe, and not unlike the destruction that you and I both know of is going on in our military and athletic community. So, tell our audience your story, man. How did you get started into brain health before we even dive into some of the amazing things that you've done in your life?
For sure. Yeah. So, as you kind of alluded to, my story starts about 3.5 years ago. So unfortunately lost my brother, United States Marine Corps Captain Matthew Brewer to suicide. So, Matt was a all-state linebacker and running back in high school, was an all-state wrestler, got to the Naval Academy, went to the prep school there, was a 2-year starter as a linebacker there, wore the number 38, hence the 38 challenge. Was a heavyweight boxing champion there. And then after after his decorated career as a football player, he won in the Marine Corps doing heavy artillery special operations, right? So Matt was by his superiors called the Captain America of the Marines. Was continuing to climb the ranks, highly decorated. But yeah, man, once we lost him, we were just, as we all are, rudely introduced to this world of mental illness and brain injuries. So at that time, man, God just kind of put it on my heart to channel that grief and energy into something positive, right? And very similar to the Mac Parkman Foundation. So I created the 38 challenge. I got Matt's dog tags tattooed on my back, attached to a crown of thorns next to a cross when he was alive, right? So he was my best friend. He was basically raised me. And that dude loved to work out, and he loved to go through some pain and suffering. So I thought, what better way to honor him than to create a brutal workout? So I created the 38 challenge. You've done it before, obviously, Bruce. It's a 400-meter run, 38 push-ups, 38 sit-ups, 38 squats. You do it as many times as you can in 38 minutes. The beautiful thing about suffering, though, is that it's different to everyone, right? So, you've played the bagpipes, and I've spoken at our events. We've had toddlers crawling there to adaptive athletes in wheelchairs, to elderly people walking around the stadium. So really the purpose of the 38 Challenge as an organization is to challenge the stigma associated with being vulnerable, right? How do we empower a hard population, which is military and athletes? How do we empower them to do a hard thing, which is to ask for help, right? And to really reduce that stigma of mental health. And thankfully in society, we're definitely going towards that direction, right? I think a lot of people understand that, it's this whole, tough guy macho thing doesn't work, and that, you have to kind of embrace the vulnerable side too. The other half of the organization of the 38 Challenge initially raised dollars to go towards funding research at Boston University's Unite Brain Bank. Dr. McKee's work up there, really looking at the effects of blast exposure, of repetitive head impacts for the military and athlete population. I ended up running the military programs there for a little bit at the Concussion Legacy Foundation. They're doing fantastic work. I just felt like in the Concussion Legacy Foundation does a lot of things on the legislation piece, right? How do we raise awareness of this problem, right? And how do we prevent it in the future, which is incredibly necessary. I felt in my heart that, God was kind of calling me to find different ways of healing the brain, right? How do we, for these guys like my brother and like Mac, who have experienced these level of brain injuries, what can we do now to help to resolve some of those challenges that are faced by repetitive head impacts and blast exposure? So at that point, I created the Brain Optimization Lab, as you alluded to. And the Brain Optimization Lab is really right now positioned as a research and development company. And our thinking is that, the best approach to brain health is probably a multimodality approach, right? How do we combine emerging non-invasive modalities into protocols, and then how do we collect data on those protocols so that people understand the effects of something like sauna, cold plunge, and breath work on a population that's that's experiencing these challenges. Because right now in the industry, there's I wouldn't even say a lot. There's siloed research on these modalities separate of each other. None of them really looking at how it impacts the specific population of military and athletes. But there hasn't been any research on the entire protocol of sauna, breathwork, and cold plunge, and those are just a couple of our modalities, obviously, Bruce, as you know. So yeah, man, I'm obviously, my partner there is Jordan Reed. He's a former Pro Bowl tight end, amazing dude who had to retire due to too many concussions. So we are making waves for sure. It's a slow and uphill grind, but we're looking forward to it.
No, I mean, amazing story, Brandt. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, what you're doing with Jordan, and we'll unpack, some of this. I mean, when we come to your brother, that's what we want the audience to understand. I mean, when it comes to brain health, your brother, like my son, did everything wrong, right?
Right.
Boxing, football, and then he becomes, of all things, in the Marine Corps, an artilleryman. All right, and a lot of people might not have read the VA study, which the VA said was linked, but it absolutely looked at suicide rates by what we call military occupational specialty, or MOS. And we did see that anybody in the indirect fire, artillery, special operations, explosives communities had significantly higher suicide rates than the rest of the military population. So,
For sure.
you know,
Yeah, and I think the significance of what you're putting on for the Army Navy event. I mean, these guys who are playing in that game, like my brother, they're as you said, a very unique population of guys who have played football their entire lives, right? Since they were 6 or 7 years old, and then they played at the highest. I mean, almost the highest level you can play at. And then after that, these guys who are Type A dudes who joined the military and went to the academy to blow people up and to protect their country, most of them go into things like special operations or heavy artillery, especially at the Naval Academy. I mean, it's the only service academy where you can be an officer in the Marine Corps, which is known for being on the ground, right, and combat. But yeah, man, I think there's a couple directions we can go in, but I think important to note, like people that I've talked to, my brother, he experienced the trauma piece of it, right? He served in Mali, Africa, where he saw dead children on the side of the road. Like that certainly leaves a scar on your conscious, and then obviously all the blast exposure as well. But I mean, he would say they'd go in, and the guidelines say no more than 2 rockets a day, and these guys are shooting off 10. And when they get back, they're throwing up. They don't remember how they got back to their units. Like it's serious stuff, and it's not unique, right? It's a story that's told over and over again in this heavy artillery and special operations community. Guys trying to push the limit, right? To blow past the guidelines. And I mean, it's especially for the military community. It's like, where do we find this fine line of these guys are preparing for war, right? They're preparing for war, which is the art of killing, right, and protecting. And so, but we need to find this middle ground of being able to protect them. And then also the importance of this game, and I think you and I've talked about this a little bit, but also differentiating the difference between CTE and blast exposure, right? There's this misconception that a lot of operators and heavy artillery guys are experiencing CTE. And that might be the case if they played sports growing up, but what the literature's finding and what the doctors are finding is that the real problem in the military is this repetitive blast exposure, which from a symptoms perspective looks almost identical to something like CTE, but it's very, in science and in health, it's very important to differentiate those two things, because the way that we solve for those issues and the way that we prevent them might be completely different.
You're absolutely right, man. There's so much stuff you just said I want to dial into, but on that last statement, there is significant disagreement that military exposure to RB does not cause CTE, because it does not produce the symptoms, the same findings that repetitive ed impacts do find, especially when it comes down to p-tau and some of those key discriminators or identifiers specifically of CTE. But the root cause of the mental illness and the brain damage that's causing that is from that repetitive blast exposure, which causes different forms of damage to the brain. But just like repetitive impacts, the first indication we have that we have somebody's different, or somebody's that has a problem, is mental illness, and we are completely untrained. But you brought up a good part when you talked about the Concussion Legacy Foundation and research, and I want to take that a little bit into women's sports, because rugby right now is the fastest growing women's sport in I think in North America. I know it is in Canada, and I was really pissed off when I saw a female researcher get up and tell an entire room of neurologists and brain specialists that, well, I've been told that if you're not tackling, it ain't rugby. Well, I'm a semi-pro rugby player, and it doesn't matter. She was actually endorsing as a neurologist that women and children, like girls, tackle in rugby because so they can really experience the sport, which we know is the root cause of repetitive ed impacts. It is RHI, and it leads to brain damage and eventually to CTE. In your opinion, I think we need a lot more research on this. I mean, most of the research we've seen is in like high school football players, which are 100% male. right? In the studies, right? So, how do we, I just, I wanted
Yeah,
to get
for
you.
sure. The first thing I think of is I had a conversation with a guy who's attached to a university that has a brain bank. It's not Boston University, and he said that the number one issue that they face at UNC is actually the number one population is women's soccer for people who are experiencing CTE. Now, with the people that I've talked to, that might be a very biased brain bank. I mean, I think if you look at the overall, like, who are the most impacted people by this, it's men's football players and boxers and those types of things. However, the interesting thing about women is that they have longer and weaker necks, right? So their brains are more susceptible, right? So, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but what has been told to me is like things like rugby or things like women's soccer, right? Maybe it's a thing where it's not, because the impacts to the brain are more impactful because the neck is longer and weaker. Maybe the course of getting to something as severe as CTE might be quicker. Maybe it requires less impacts to the head, right? Maybe the impacts don't need to be as severe. So these are just things we have to keep in mind. But I mean, and we've had multiple conversations, Bruce, about the need of tackle football in children, like Jordan himself, right? Who's one of the best tight ends ever, right?
He says Gronkowski can't touch him on running routes, man.
I mean, we had a conversation with.
He says he catch a little bit better,
Yeah,
maybe.
no, we had a conversation with Gronk's manager, or his marketing guy, and he was like, oh, we were just talking about Jay Reid the other day, like Gronk was saying how badass of a route runner Jordan was. So I mean he's very, very well respected as a tight end goes, and has done things that you've never really seen on the football field before. But his perspective, right, is like, you don't need to be tackling as a 7-year-old, right? Like you can learn the skills of how to tackle, right? And you can learn, you can get all these other things like hard work and camaraderie, right? Like, I as a kid, I think running sprints when you're 7 or 8 years old till you throw up, I think that's valuable, right? Because I think it adds character and it adds suffering, but you don't have to bang heads, right? It's like, I always say, like, hey, if I saw a 7-year-old going up to a wall and just banging his head on it, I'd be like, what's going on? Like, why is that kid doing that? That is going to be detrimental for his health. And also, like, why is he doing that? Is he okay? But it's like, that's what's happening in child sports. And I mean, the case of, starting women's rugby at 7 years old, it's like, it just doesn't, it's not necessary, right? Like, you can teach these girls these skills, and without putting them in danger.
Yeah, I mean, to the next, it is right. It is actually a fact. It's in my book that women have a longer neck to body ratio and a weaker neck muscle structure. It's how God made them.
Right.
Your comments on does that lead to faster CTE? You would think that given the same amount of exposure, they would actually get damaged a little bit more easier. You look at my neck. I have no neck. I've been called a turtle my whole life, man.
Yeah,
That's why I
yeah.
carry rucksacks, okay, right?
Right.
But it's just a different neck structure. And follow that Gronk marketing guy. We need to reach out to them for the Army Navy game. See if we can get them on. Just a little side note there.
For sure.
Yeah, but these the way that we look at kids football and the way we look at the military, it's all about exposure. And there are better ways to train. And I was talking to a father yesterday who said his son was being lined up. No, I was talking. My nephew is an NFL coach in Germany, and he was telling me how he went up to his youth football team that he manages, and the coach had these kids lining up 10 yards away and just running each other. No ball, no skills, just run into it. He said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I want them to experience contact." He goes, "Number one, you don't need to experience contact, especially without any skills involved. And you need to limit that because I've lost my nephew to this stuff. And here's a man who's in the sport wrestling with the loss of his nephew. And how do we make it easier and safer? The big thing is safer. We're not going to get rid of contact sports. We're not going to get rid of the military. And in the military, conversations are, look, if the problem that we have is that these men and women have either been in war or training for war for 20-something years, man. So the exposure, much like if you allow your kid to play football all year round, is relentless. It's unprecedented. And there
Right.
are consequences for taking that brain. And for girls, we have had some unfortunate tragedies, young women and men who like to practice heading the ball. And they would head the ball for hundreds of times a day, not knowing, the parents not knowing that each time they head the ball, that brain shifts. And there's no known way to stop that. So, on the brain optimization lab, it seems like you and Jordan are starting to address these issues with, therapy, with treatments. How did you select the treatments that you're working with right now? And what are some of the benefits you're seeing with their application to the athletes and veterans that you're working with?
For sure. Yeah. So I think important to note, like, and I always say this, like we in the brain health space, right? The reason, like, the problem that I saw, right, and I found this problem at the Concussion Legacy Foundation because there's so much skepticism of different treatments that are out there, and that skepticism is for good reason, right? A lot of data that's presented for these emerging modalities, which I'll discuss, a lot of them are produced by marketing companies, similar to like pharmaceuticals, right? Of course they're going to say that it's effective. And also there's a lot of inconclusive data, meaning, some studies say that it's effective, some that it's not effective. A lot of the different protocols that were used for some of these modalities are very inconsistent. So we can't really draw to the effects of that because we don't have it. We don't have enough data. Right. So that's kind of the problem that we're trying to look out for at the brain optimization lab. We are technology agnostic. One, we don't care what if freaking, sniffing the Sharpie helps with brain health, which it doesn't. But if it did, we would research it,
Don't try this at home.
yeah, don't. But seriously, like if we would try anything that if, and my approach is like keeping my ear to the ground, right? Like what is going on in the special operations community that these guys are trying and saying that works, right? So with that caveat, right, and we by no means have a solution, right? We hope to someday, find something that works, but that's kind of the journey that we're on. So how we selected the modalities is really just looking at what modalities are out there, and what does the research say, right? Are they promising? Is there rigor behind the data, et cetera? And then also looking at the problem that is faced in our military and athlete population. And I'll just go through it really quickly. But you talk about the brain injuries, right? So, and that leads to all this symptomology, right? Lack of oxygen in the brain, parts of the brain not working as they should. You have the endocrine dysfunction, right? So you've got hormonal levels are off. That's caused by stress, high performance environments, as well as brain injuries. And then you have this kind of the spiritual trauma piece of it as well, right? A lot of, you and I have talked about this for a while, Bruce, but just childhood trauma and things that we bottle up that we don't even know that we're bottling up, to things that we experience through life, like that also has an impact on your entire body and brain. So looking at the mechanisms of what the problem is, and really the big difference between military, like professional athletes or high performing athletes, and veterans, like is very small, right? Like the veterans have this life experience kind of to the max, where you see somebody die or you take a life, or and you also are experiencing this blast exposure. But in terms of like the types of personalities, the types of pressure and performance, like very, very similar problems. So when we were looking at these modalities, we're looking at kind of how do we restore, how do we solve for those problems which I just mentioned, right? So what modalities have the mechanisms to solve for those problems? So we have a couple different buckets that we take our modalities from. The first is brain restoration. So brain oxidation, blood flow to the brain, and then brain stimulation. The modalities that we use under that bucket is hyperbaric oxygen, photobiomodulation, or red light stimulation. And then we're kind of playing with things like TMS, right? Transcranial magnetic stimulation. The next bucket is nervous system regulation, right? When you go to war or you're an athlete and you're constantly tapping your adrenal glands, and your cortisol is always up here because you're always under pressure and always performing and always in these stressful environments, and that taps your nervous system. So when you come back to real life, that's where we have this kind of PTSD coming in, right? This hypervigilance. someone cuts you off on the road and now you want to murder them, or the rest of your day is ruined and you're constantly battling anxiety, right? All these things are caused by that. You know,
Been there.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's,
Yeah.
again, it's a common problem, and this is caused by that overstimulation of the nervous system. So the modalities we use there, sauna, cold plunge, breath work, is being able to regulate that nervous system so that they can kind of handle the adversity of life with more easily. And what we're finding, which we can touch on this or not, but even something like sauna, cold plunge, breath work, the mechanisms of those things, just strictly not even looking at nervous system, but just strictly looking in the brain, there's a lot of promise in that they'll be able to help this population. The third bucket, spiritual fitness and moral injury, right? So how do we make sense of the traumas of life, right? How do we kind of guide a warrior back to that warrior ethos, right? Understanding that because the uniform came off doesn't mean that you're no longer a warrior. How do we kind of find that community? How do we help them find community? How do we find them build a life that's worth living, right? Because we can do anything for your brain, but if you don't like your life, man, and you don't have something to look forward to, then what's the point, and then the last piece is that those kind of biochemical gaps, right? So especially in the military and athletic population, whether you use performance enhancing drugs, whether you took testosterone or whatever, obviously that's going to be an indicator that you're probably going to have hormonal problems down the road. But even as I mentioned, like with that high level of stress, right, that's gonna mess up your endocrine system. So kind of looking at the different biochemical gaps, obviously, the work you're doing with Mark Gordon is a fantastic example, right, of kind of the types of things we look out for. So yeah, that's kind of how we chose the modalities that we use, and we're constantly looking for more technologies to implement. And man, if our research says the hyperbaric oxygen doesn't work, then we're going to present that, like and that's valuable information, right? But the two studies we're doing right now, one's on hyperbaric oxygen paired with photobiomodulation. The hypothesis is that what will get better results when the combination of those two modalities used in a protocol, will yield to better results, because the mechanisms, make each other more impactful. And then the second study is sauna, cold plunge, breath work, not only looking at how it impacts the brain health, but then how does that experience, getting 12 dudes in the sauna and jumping into, super, super cold water and breathing together. How does that lead to, this sense of collective consciousness, this sense of community, which again is a massive, massive problem faced by our military. So that's long-winded answer, but those are kind of the different routes we're going down right now.
That's well, sounds like you're way down the path, and two issues. Number one, I was part of a SOCOM brain health initiative not too long ago, and we talk about the stigma and the macho thing. I don't know, but I think it'd be a tough sell to get 12 men on an ODA to go into a sauna and jump into a pool. But there's suffering there, and I think that's what we excel at. It's like, all right, let's go through some pain together, because that's what combat does to us. That's what training does to us, and that's what training and athletic sports does. It drives us together as a group, and we love that. And that's the beauty of contact sports. It's the beauty of any sport, right? Is that camaraderie, that team, right. The same thing that we have in the military, and that's the hardest thing to find when we lead these communities and what we try to replicate. And that's why making these activities safer from a brain perspective is so important, because everybody wants to be a part of that. I mean, I dream about being in the military 3 nights a week, and I've left it 23 years ago, for crying out loud.
Right.
But to your point, a lot of the modalities you're talking about are not FDA approved or evidence-based backed and all this crud that I keep hearing as a reason not to offer them, not to cover them. Yet when we look at mental illness, the approach of, and I'll keep saying this to the audience, of drugs and therapy does not work. It hasn't worked. And that's why we still have 22 guys a day and girls taking their lives. And it's time to look outside the box at things that might work, because when it comes to the end of a life, we have to take those risks. Go ahead.
And you see me at my worst, right? With my experience getting off of those pharmaceutical drugs, right?
Oh, so, good Lord. Yeah. The benzos.
Yeah, I understand that problem firsthand. I understand what it's like to battle those thoughts of not wanting to be here. It's hell on earth, man. And I'm excited for this new legislation. This new group coming in, right? RFK Jr. I mean, he's made it very clear. I saw something that the 5 CEOs of the top pharmaceutical companies had an emergency meeting after Trump won because they know that,
Love it.
they know that people are coming after them because I mean you're giving people addictive substances, right? That there's maybe one molecule difference of what's being sold on the street, and then and it's like, and even with like mental illness in general, right? Like I talked to a psychiatrist for 15 minutes and now he's diagnosed me with something based upon a cluster of symptoms, then giving me medication. It's like, what do you like? It's ridiculous, right? And so, but yeah, I mean, so we're taking the approach of healing the root cause, as I mentioned, as I detailed, right? There's a specific root causes that are causing these people to, and it's complicated and it's multifaceted, but we believe there's approaches to help these guys out. And then from the brain optimization lab perspective, like we're either taking someone who's in suboptimal or suffering and taking them back to normal, or we're taking someone from normal and we're optimizing their brain health, right? So like these guys, yeah, like might be a little sus getting into a sauna, but it's like if we can show data where it's like this is going to make you a more lethal killer, get in the damn sauna. This is going to make you sleep better at night and recover better. These guys will be like, okay, I'll get in the sauna. So our goal is to have this objective data where we can show these guys where, if you get in the sauna and breathe and get into the cold, like you're becoming more lethal warrior. You can go kill more bad guys. Oh, and by the way, you're also.
But you got to get rid of that mentality of, toughen it up, because I almost died in my sauna because I did my 15 minutes. I'm like, I'll do 30, more is better. Right. And after about 20 minutes, my heart rate was, I thought I was going to die, dude, because I'm stupid. I'm like, all right, more is better. No, not. Right. And so understanding those limitations and getting
and
away.
Also like, if you're a tough guy and you get into a 210 degree sauna, like, for 15, 20 minutes, like it's not easy, like it's
once the military knows and athletes know that this can help and everything that we're talking about, this is what bothers me. All right. And I'm just going to make this statement because this is the crux of what you just talked about. I do believe, and that there have been more men and women. I know this for a fact. Let me say this, that there appears to be more men and women that have taken their lives under the care or under the effect of these drugs than have died in combat. Okay. And we're still doing it. We're still doing it. I just talked to a kid the other day that was prescribed a benzodiazepine for sleep from the military.
Right.
What are we talking about? A highly addictive substance given to a kid. I wanted a doctor and they all shut up and wouldn't talk to me. But we are unbelievably just medicating our community with very, very bad drugs for things that could be affected, improved through non-life-threatening modalities. Everything you just talked about is not going to kill you. All right. No. Now you could pass out in the sauna and die if you're just an idiot. But sauna therapy is not like a drug that over time is going to kill you or make you dependent or cause you to have symptoms that require another drug. And then I come to like veterans, man, these bags of drugs that they get, for their illnesses is crazy. And I think that athletes have the same problem, man,
For sure. Yeah. I think, and it's the system, man. Like, I think I always caveat by saying like, there's good people within the VA that want to help, but the system by itself is incredibly flawed.
Got to be evidence-based,
It's and their evidence is backed by pharmaceutical companies, and that's a whole other conversation. But it's like, okay, 1 in every 3 veterans are prescribed 10 or more pharmaceutical drugs. 1 in every 3, 10 or more pharmaceutical drugs. When you're withdrawing from benzodiazepines, the chances of suicide are 800% more greater. 800% when you're withdrawing.
Benzos and alcohol are the only 2 withdrawals that will kill you. Kill you. 100%.
Yeah, right? 100%. And it's like, and again, benzodiazepines like are supposed to be used for like you're on a flight, right? And like you have horrible flight anxiety, and the only way you're going to get on that plane is if you take a Xanax, right? Like that is the use case for benzodiazepines. Or maybe, you're in an incredibly stressful week of your life and you need to take one, for a week you need to take it to sleep. Maybe. But like the fact that benzodiazepines are prescribed for insomnia or some of these sleep issues, like, and then you understand one, and the brutal thing is like that guy who you're talking to who is given these things, it's going to work, and it's going to work well. He's going to get the best night of his sleep for the best sleep of his life for a year, 2 years. And then he's going to start to feel these kind of side effects. And then he's got the choice of going up in dose, which is a horrible decision, or trying to taper off. And when he tries to taper off, he's going to go through hell. And that's when that 800% increase of, and then it's the same thing with SSRIs. And these are frontline medications. And I think what happens, this is my opinion, is you go to you finally take that step. I need help, right? I'm going to go to the VA. I'm going to go to a psychiatrist and get some help. Okay. Now you're diagnosed with PTSD. You're diagnosed with depression, anxiety. That becomes a part of your identity, right? I am these things. I have PTSD. I am depressed, right? Then it becomes a part of your identity. Then you're given this thing called an antidepressant. Beautiful name, great marketing, right? This is gonna get rid of my depression, and you this anti-anxiety medication, and this is going to get rid of these things. And then when you start taking them, you realize this isn't working. There's a black box warning saying that, hey, actually, there's a greater chance that you'll actually kill yourself. Just heads up. And then when you realize,
it's not required by law to be mentioned. There's actually legislation pending right now mandating that veterans anyways are told that this drug has a black box warning that suicidal ideation could occur, and they're not told that.
So then they're put on these medications that are either not working for the most part, 20% that it works, 20% of people that it works. That's probably inflated. And so you had just given this hope. I'm going to take these pills. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to feel like hope. I'm going to start feeling like I'm back to my old self, right? Once you leave that doctor's office, you have this hope that these medications are going to work. And then when you realize that these medications are either making the problem worse or not working, then that hope is then stripped away from you again. And then you throw the pills in the toilet, not understanding that ripping yourself off of medications without tapering off is detrimental, right? So, and that, in my opinion, that's when veterans kill themselves, is because their hope's taken away again. They don't think that, the medication's not working, and their brain chemicals are thrown off so much because they're kind of throwing all these prescriptions down the toilet. In my opinion, that's when someone's most vulnerable to take their lives. And I think there's a lot of logic behind that.
All right. Well, look, we got so much to talk about, but we're going to have you come back on the show 300 more times. But look, for all those of you who haven't done a 38 challenge, you think, 38 minutes, go try it, right? And I've done a bunch of these, man. I still do them as part of my, I want to mix things up. 38 minutes doesn't sound like a lot of time, but you'll get one heck of a workout courtesy of Captain Matthew Brewer and Brandt McCartney here. Brandt, as we close out, tell us a little bit more about the Brain Optimization Lab. How do they find you? And then, what else are you working on? And we'll go ahead and move on to
for sure. Yeah, I think the most public stuff is at the 38challenge.com. So go there. You can, learn more about my brother, learn more about kind of what we do on the organizational piece. All the money now raised for the 38 Challenge will go towards veterans going through our protocols through the Brain Optimization Lab. So I think, be on the lookout we're going to start recruiting for different studies, right? If you want to get free sauna, cold plunge, breath work, get a free wearable device, right? Meet other like-minded people. You want free hyperbaric oxygen treatment. And, we had a conversation with a SOCOM physician assistant. And these guys are looking for these modalities anyways, right? And they have to pay $40,000 out of pocket. So if you want it for free, come to the Brain Optimization Lab, right? We'll take care of you. And I mean, that's our hope, man, is, you mentioned not FDA approved. Where we're going is we're trying to do it we're trying to follow the healthcare scientific model, right? Where we can prove the effectiveness of these protocols and start to layer them into each other, so that these modalities can be covered by something like the VA or TRICARE. So yeah, I mean, go to 38challenge.com. And it's a lot of exciting things in the works.
Well, Brandt, really thank you on coming on the show. Can't wait to see you. I know you're coming to our Army Navy gig, and really thank you for your time. For all our audience out there, just a reminder, December 14th, Army Navy game. Army is 8-0, could go to the playoffs. Navy's up there too, man. And this is not an Army.
We got to turn it around. We got to turn it around.
Oh, okay. Well, it's still going to be one heck of a game.
Oh, yeah,
and
it's going to be fantastic. Yeah.
It's going to be great, man. I think both the president-elect and the president will be there. We've got an amazing tailgate at the center, the sports center, adjacent to the stadium. We've got an entire parking lot, AC/DC, Horse Soldier Bourbon, Blue Fusion. We got all kinds of veteran support organizations there. Really want to get the word out. Please go to www.mpfact.com. MPFACT, that's the Mac Parkman Foundation for Adolescent Concussive Trauma.com. Look at the wedding site. Also, do not forget our book, right? Youth Contact Sports and Broken Brains is free. You can go to the website. You can download it. Please spread the word. Every life we touch with this book is saving lives. It's creating awareness. And remember, our goal is to make sports safer as we work with the military to make training safer, because these are the largest preventable causes of mental illness that we're aware of. And we can fix this. We can fix this. We can fix the people that have been impacted, and we can fix things so that people that are going to participate in our military, in our sports, are covered. They're not impacted as we go forward. So anyways, really thank you for the attention. Brandt, cannot thank you enough for coming on. You are a driving force for brain health, and we love you, man. You take care of yourself, and we'll talk soon.
Love you too, Brucey.
All right.
Thanks.